or you well, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 80 of the Game Changers. I'm your host Carla, and tonight I'm bringing the heat with none other than Howard Bender. His knowledge and insights are sure to elevate our conversation as I dig into the game behind the game. A huge shout out to the incredible TSA team for backing this mission of amplifying voices and sparking ideas. This platform exists because of visionaries like them and listeners like you. Whether you're here for fantasy football, gold, or simply love stories that shift perspectives, you are in the right place. The Game Changers is more than a podcast, it's a movement. Let's kick things off by getting to know our guest a little better. So, who is Howard Bender? Howard Bender shaping the fantasy sports landscape. Howard Bender has spent over 20 years at the forefront of the fantasy sports industry, blending deep expertise with a sharp, relatable voice that resonates across platforms. As head of content and president of operations at Fantasy Alarm, he's helped transform the site into a go to destination for NFL and MLB fans seeking smart, actionable insights. His work spans multiple media formats. Howard hosts the Fantasy Alarm Show and Fantasy Alarm Game Day Morning on SiriusXM, Fantasy Sports Radio, and leads several shows on Fantasy Alarm's YouTube channel, including Alarm Fantasy Football, Better Sports Betting, and Lisa Ann Does Fantasy Better. He's also a contributing writer for the New York Post, where his analysis reaches a broader audience beyond the fantasy sports niche. Howard's presence on social media reflects his commitment to community, conversation, and keeping the game fun. Whether he's breaking down mashup or challenging conventional wisdom, Howard brings clarity, humor, and heart to everything he does. He's not just covering the game, he's helping redefine how it's played, consumed, and understood. Howard, how are you tonight? And welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. That was the best, warmest introduction I think I've ever gotten. So thank you so much for all of that. I appreciate it. I love being here.
Of course, I love introducing my guests, and I love when they say that I introduce them in a good way. It makes my work like great at this point. So let's talk a little bit about fantasy sports origin and evolution, Howard. What was your aha moment that pulled you into the fantasy sports?
Well, it's actually kind of funny. I mean, I played around a little bit, growing up. There were, a couple of, leagues, things like, Stratomatic for fantasy baseball, sort of a thing. But I mean, it never really hooked in until I guess it was like the late 90s when the internet boom really kind of turned fantasy sports around. And, I'd been working as an actor. I'd done some stand up in New York City for a while, and I was
Really?
yeah, yeah. And I was tending bar a few nights a week. So that was where the direction was going. But I was playing in this rotating poker game, right? Every Sunday night, it was like the same 7 to 8 people who were in there, and we would just kind of go from apartment to apartment to play every Sunday night. One of the guy's dads turned around and said that he was starting a new fantasy baseball league, and he wanted to know if we wanted to join. And we all were sitting there talking about it. We're all obvious sports fans. You've got the game on while we're all playing poker, so we all joined, and
Yeah.
and then we just kind of got bit by the bug. And then I sat there, reading some of like the early content that was being put out on the various platforms. I just kind of said to myself, I'm like, you know what, I'm doing well in the leagues, and I think I'm an educated person. I can actually write, and it beat the hell out of pounding the pavement for auditions. I didn't, I mean, I got bit by the entertainment bug, but it's just in a different fashion here.
That's amazing. What an amazing story. I didn't know that you were acting as well. That's awesome to know, Howard. So, how has the fantasy sports landscape changed in the last 20 years?
Oh, I mean, it is. It's unbelievably how it's just it's grown exponentially. I mean,
Yeah,
when I first started, I mean, it was like, a couple of guys had some blogs, you had, a handful of content websites, I was, freelancing for, like RotoWire and Fangraphs and Fantasy Alarm and, a couple of different other spots. I was just writing, my own blog. And then all of a sudden, I mean, it's just taken off to the point where I mean it's the industry is so saturated now with content creators and people who want to break into it, and the fact
agreed.
it's so easy to like just start up your own podcast, something in that vein. So I think that it's a tougher I think it's a tougher industry to really crack now than it was 20 years ago when I started, because now I mean it is, if you want to work full time in this industry, I mean it is a very, very difficult thing to do, just in this day and age. So especially as a content creator with AI really being able to replace certain content creation. So I think it's much more
Hey,
difficult to break in right now, just with the general abundance of people trying to get in.
so, talking about AI, what do you think about AI being part of the fantasy sports industry?
I embrace it. I mean, it's one
Yeah,
of those things where everybody hates change, right? Change can be
yes,
tough, change can be difficult, and content creators don't want to be, you know, declared obsolete because AI can write a waiver wire article for you, or it can write an
right?
injury report article. For me, I think of it as a way that you're going to enhance certain things. We're doing a bunch of AI stuff over at Fantasy Alarm right now, which I'll tell you, I mean, for your listeners there, if you want to get in on the ground floor of like just trying to, you know, see what it's all about, and be a beta tester, you can go to fantasyfootball.ai and sign up with us. It's free, right? And
Yes,
you're gonna help us test that out. Because I mean, think about it. Everybody's got different schedules, different time zones. Fantasy football is definitely an international thing. That if somebody's sitting there, let's say they get off of work at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, but they live in Europe, and like all of a sudden they have the set their lineup, and they're going to need to ask certain questions. The AI, or at least the stuff that we're doing with right now, is giving you like the Fantasy Alarm answer. What would Howard Bender do? What would Andrew Cooper do? Things like that. So I think you can only just you have to embrace it. You have to let it enhance what you're doing, not let it replace what you're doing. Be more
agreed.
innovative, be more personable. AI cannot have personality, as far as like, somebody in a conversation in a Discord or something like that.
100% agree with you. So, what's one trend in fantasy sports you wish it would disappear?
A trend in fantasy sports that I wish would disappear.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, I guess, you always gotta, social media, and and the just the back and forth sometimes that happens. Like I don't mind answering questions. I've been like shut down by Twitter for answering too many questions in a 24-hour span.
yeah,
But it's the people who don't appreciate the free work that you're putting out there, that you're helping, and and then they won't support you on a pay site, and then when you give them free information on Twitter or something like that, if it's not the right answer for them, then they come back and they just drop so much hate. So I
yeah.
kind of wish that wasn't really a thing, you know?
I agree with you 100%. So, I don't know what's with the free stuff lately, but if you are an artist, if you are a writer, if you are part of fantasy football, I see it around that if there's nothing for free, I see the attack behind it, and it's not right. And I would agree with you 100% into this. I see it, and I wish it would disappear because you're not supposed to work for free because you are staying hours and hours, especially like after midnight, trying to figure out how you can give people your insights and your knowledge, and for them to not even acknowledge it, it's something not okay in my opinion.
Yeah,
I love that you said that.
it gets incredibly frustrating at times. It does, and it's one of
Great.
those things, where it's like, you support the industry, support the analyst, and obviously there's, other avenues that you can do, but
Yes,
yeah, I think that, you know, people underestimate. People think that, there are times where it's like, oh, it's so cool. I wish I had your job, blah, blah, blah. You know, are you getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and like writing articles about like and researching for hours and hours and hours to write
agree.
about, what Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive scheme looks like and why that's, why, who you want to invest in for fantasy, right? I mean, if I'm doing that kind of legwork on there, I mean, yeah, I mean, come on, that's, a little something for the effort. You subscribe because, I mean, the people who do and get the information are, are winning leagues, but you get people who are just, there's so much information out there on the internet for free that they're like, well, we'll just live on that.
Yeah, but they need to go to the people that they know what they're doing, like yourself and someone else that they are really doing their job in the industry. Especially that some injuries are out there. Some of them are maybe going to jail, or some of them are not being able to play. There's always news, like you're saying, and you guys do your work like diligently, which is really amazing, and we see it like us, the people that they do their work, they see that people like you enjoy what they're doing, but at the same time, they want people to acknowledge that work. And we don't see it a lot. And I'm with you on that point. So, how do you balance analytics with gut instinct, Howard?
Ooh, I mean, that's the standard question, right? When you start
Yes.
looking at certain things like that. You know what? I mean, listen, it's kind of funny because if you're talking about fantasy football, it's such a matchup based game, and things change so much that your year to year data kind of becomes, a little obsolete. If a coach, leaves a team
Yeah.
and they have to hire a new offensive coordinator and they're changing the scheme, and different guys are going to have different roles, that you can't really look at them from year to year and say, well, just because he did that last year means that he's going to do that this year. So I balance pretty well. I mean, obviously if a team is locked in and has the same coach and the same scheme from year to year, you kind of understand which way to go, and you're looking at things like snap counts and touches and things like that. But if I'm looking at a team that has a new coach, new coordinator, and it's changing things around, I have to do a little look and feel sort of a thing, and kind of guesstimate, really, like, this wide receiver suits this offense a lot better, and therefore you go with him. But there's no data really to back it up other than what the coach has done in the past. So I would
Great.
say I'm probably about 50-50 with analytics versus just understanding the just concepts of the game of football.
I love that. I love that. Because sometimes, some people will pick one or another, but I love that. So I'm gonna say hello to everybody that's coming saying hi to me and Howard. And we love you all. And I'm gonna say hi to everybody that's coming on TikTok. Move and go to YouTube because I cannot talk to you, but Howard is on. It's fantasy football night, and we're going live from YouTube. So, Howard, what's the wildest trade you've ever made, and did it pay off?
The wisest trade I ever made.
The wildest.
A wildest trade
Wild.
ever made.
Yes.
Um, it's baseball. It's fantasy baseball
Really?
related. I traded away Giants starting pitcher Tim Lincecum, after he won his second Cy Young Award to a buddy of mine. It was a keeper league. And, everybody had this whole kind of feel that Tim Lincecum was going to be this dominant force for years. And he was. He
Yeah.
was fantastic. And I traded him right after he won that second Cy Young Award. And I said that, it's only downhill from here. And I think I probably got like 5 really, really, really strong players to win this keeper league like that year. So it was like a crazy trade where I gave away a pitcher that people they were bonkers over the fact that I traded him away. And it turned out to be the right move. So it was wild at the time, even more wild that it won for
But
me.
it paid off. Nice. Have you ever dropped a player and regretted?
Have I ever dropped a player and regretted it?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Probably. I mean, when I first started playing fantasy sports, I didn't really have the chops, the
Yes.
experience that, of grueling certain things and really understanding when I first started playing like fantasy football, I didn't understand it as that it was as matchup based as it was. And when I was playing fantasy baseball early on, the wild swings that like you would have a guy who would be amazing for the month of April and then completely terrible the entire rest of the season. So, it wasn't so much about dropping guys as much as it was like buying into them. There was a Detroit Tigers first baseman named Chris Shelton years and years and years ago. And the dude hit like 12 home runs in the first month of the season. All right.
Yeah.
And I was like, and people were offering me trades for this guy over the place. And I didn't take him because I was like, this guy's amazing. He's so awesome. Look at him. He's going to be probably like 60 home runs. He's going to break every record. And so, it's like, I didn't make those deals that I should have made. And then he was atrocious the whole rest of the way. I think he hit maybe 3 home runs the entire rest of the season.
Wow. That's crazy. So, if fantasy sports were a movie genre, what would it be for you, Howard?
If it were a movie genre,
Yeah.
I think it would have to be a rom-com, right? Wouldn't fantasy sports be a rom-com? Because right, you meet it at first and you hit it off really well, and then something happens and you're like, I'm never going to play this game again. I'm not doing it again. And then somewhere at the very tail end of it all, you're like, I miss you so much. Oh, I miss you too. Well, let's get back together again and we'll win some championships. Okay, sure. So fantasy sports is my rom-com genre.
I love that. Hey, Stevie. I love that, Howard. I love it. Oh my God. So let's talk a little bit about strategy, stats, and smack talk. What's your golden rule for fantasy drafting?
My golden rule for fantasy drafting. Draft with your heart, with your head, not with your heart. Right?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
that's
Very important.
really, when you're looking at players and, you've got certain guys where you're just like, I love the guy so much. I want him on my team. I want him on my team. And you end up you alter your draft plan. Maybe you draft him a little too early than you should have because you're worried that you don't get him. So really draft him with your head instead of your heart is I mean, that should definitely be a golden rule when it comes to drafting.
So I cannot draft someone from my team. If I love them, Howard, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, the funny thing is, so it's kind of funny because I've been on this conversation with a lot of people lately talking about because I'm in a stupid number of fantasy leagues. Like it's dumb, right? I mean, it's crazy
Crazy.
how many leagues I play. And so when I sit there and I talk about players and I'm always like, I mean, I have a couple of shares of him because I really like the player and I really wanted to get him. And and a lot of people don't play in that many leagues, and so they can't really do that as much. So yeah, I mean, it's really kind of tough to sit there and and spread it all out, and just take every guy.
So no Mahomes for me.
No more. Or are you soft on? Are you sweet on Patrick Mahomes here?
Yes, I am.
Oh,
Look at that. Look at
listen, I love him. I love him, right? And it's
me
not just
too.
because he sounds like Kermit the Frog. That's just an
Oh my!
added bonus.
I always tell people I love seeing him. Do not talk, man. Do not talk. I love that. Howard, how many teams are you drafting? Talking about teams right now and drafting.
You know what the funny thing is I don't even know. I've lost count of how many best ball drafts I've
Me-
done already. I've probably done somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 70 best ball drafts at this point,
oh
right?
wow,
I mean, there's like a whole Beat Howard Bender best ball tournament over at rtsports.com. So if you guys go to
great.
rtsports.com/bender, then you'll be able to actually you go in there and you'll see like there's a deposit bonus for you, and then there's a button that says draft against me. And it's like
So
it's a
RTC.
$10,000 grand prize tournament there that you pay 20, it's $20 for a team. And it's
Nice.
a giant tournament over there. So I'm doing so many of those. And then on top of it, it's like all the other leagues, the leagues for Sirius XM, the leagues for Fantasy Alarm, and my home leagues and all that stuff. I don't even want to, last year I did 103 leagues. 100
103 leagues. You
and
kidding me?
I wanted to kill myself. It was that much of a pain in the ass to like manage that many teams. So, I swore that I would pare it down this year. But I mean, I'm probably going to end up pushing like, over 100 best ball teams that I don't have to worry about there. But I'm probably going to be sitting there with like 20 to 25 regular season long leagues again.
They're asking me to do one team, and I'm like, nope. You're telling me over 100? Serious? Oh, I applaud you, my friend. I applaud you. That's insane.
Yeah,
Wow.
sniper me asking the question here. How many of those 103 were managed? All of them. That didn't count. That didn't count my best ball
I mean,
drafts from
you're talking
last
to
year.
Howard. Of course, he's gonna manage all of them. That's
Oh,
insane,
it
though.
was
That's
brutal.
insane.
It was
Kudos for
brutal.
you, though. Kudos. So what's your favorite stat that most people overlook?
My favorite stat that
Mhm.
most people overlook. I mean, it's kind of funny because I don't think that with the rise of analytics right now, I don't think that a lot of people overlook it. Now, if you're talking like in fantasy baseball, weighted on base average, aka WOBA, I
Yeah,
mean, I love that stat because it really it's a good accurate measurement of the type of hitter. Does he walk a lot? Does he get on base a lot? Does everything that goes along with his performance, and so I think weighted on base average is probably a little bit on the underrated side, especially with you get so many new metrics. I don't even think that there is an underrated stat in fantasy football. I mean, I love yards after the catch, right? Who doesn't love yak? Love yak, but everybody knows yak.
so is there such a thing as too much data in fantasy?
Yes, yes,
There
there
is.
is. Yeah.
How
I
is
mean,
that?
that's the standard phrase, paralysis by analysis. You could
Yeah.
legitimately sit there and you could cherry pick any kind of statistic to give you an argument pro or con for any player. I mean, I could legitimately just go through every player in the first round of any fantasy football draft and give you a negative about that player. And, that would be like pulling some weird random stat out there. So, I think that if you're diving in, there's find the stats that mean the most to you, right? Like I love
Sure.
yards after the catch because that helps me understand that when a quarterback is throwing the football, that his receivers are going to help pad his stats a little bit better because they're getting the ball into his hands. Like you look at a quarterback like Tua Tagovailoa from Miami, right? I
Yeah.
don't I don't think he's particularly special. I think he's good. I think he's serviceable. But when you have guys like, Tyreek Hill on your roster, right? And you're throwing Tyreek Hill the football, he's going to pick up the extra yardage and that's only going to make the quarterback look better,
I love
having that.
it. Yeah. So Anne is like she's sitting in my head right now and asking you a question that I wanted to ask you after. So she's asking, do you like fantasy baseball or fantasy football better?
It's a loaded question there, and Dunn. It's kind of funny because I I think I like fantasy football better
Yeah,
because honestly, the more coverage I do of fantasy baseball, the less I enjoy watching baseball games. Like I can sit and watch any football game, it doesn't matter. Like I'll watch that till the cows come home, regardless of what's happening with any of my fantasy teams. But to sit there and like really just sit down and watch a baseball game, just knowing like how long the season is and everything that comes with it, being a fantasy baseball analyst kind of, you know, it makes it work. It makes it trudgery at times, right? I'm like, I
right.
don't really, do I have to watch this baseball game right now? There's like it's like two terrible teams. Like you can watch two terrible teams in football and have the time of your life. You watch two terrible
Agree.
teams in baseball and you're like,
It gets boring. 100%. I'm with you on that. I agree 100% with you. So, tell me, Howard, what's your go-to advice for someone who always finishes last?
oh, put in the work. You're not putting in the work. Listen, I've said this a million times, and I don't mean it as offensively as it comes off, but I
I
kind of
agree.
do. It
Yeah,
takes intelligence, tenacity, and like skill to win a fantasy baseball league. But
agree.
any mouth breathing knuckle dragger can win a fantasy football league if they get lucky on the waiver wire, right? Like you find that running back who just like all of a sudden like completely lights it up. And you can get luckier in fantasy football. There's fewer games, right, to have to deal with, the season shorter, technically speaking. So I think that there's obviously there's a lot of luck and randomness that does happen in fantasy football, um, that makes it, in that kind of vein.
I love that. Put the work. Put the work. So, how do you handle trash talk in leagues, especially that you have 100 plus plus leagues, Howard?
I
Dish it or dodge it?
I encourage it. I definitely encourage it. You want to smack talk somebody, smack talk somebody. We did
Oh, let's go.
I did a whole charity thing with Fantasy Alarm called the Fantasy Football Pie Bet, right? And that
Ooh,
was,
yeah.
the loser has to take a pie to the face and post a video on social media, right? That
I think
was
you did that, right? You put
we
you. Oh
we
my
did that
God,
in Fantasy
I
Alarm a few
remember.
years ago. We ended up like raising money for charity and and just
I
having some
know.
fun with it the entire time. And that really became like a great source of smack talk with like me and Jim Bowden and our producers, on the show, right? I mean, those guys, and so we would like go at it with each other. Like, we would talk and do the show, and then like we'd get in the back channels and we'd start ripping each other for having to take a pie bet or, take a pie to the face, things like that. I think, it's that, and this is why like people, I think a lot more people like to try and play fantasy baseball as head to head, because you are playing each other each week. And so that does
Yes,
kind of bring out that smack talk. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And just and have some fun with it. You don't get personal, right? And like, I'm not talking about your mama, I'm not talking about your sister, your wife, or
I
anything
agree.
like that. Like, just we're having some fun.
Keep it classy. Keep it classy. I love that. What's your take on stacking players from the same team, which we see it a
Ooh.
lot, especially if people love that specific team?
So yeah, listen, it depends on where you're going, like what format you're playing in. Like if you're just playing in a regular old, home league, fantasy football, season long league, I don't mind if you're going to pair up like a quarterback with his top wide receiver,
Yeah,
right? Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, like, and you kind of live off of that. I don't like to go with more than that in a season long league, because you are investing so much in this one team that if they have a bad game, you could end up losing your week. You could end up getting screwed. But if you're talking about like a best ball format, large field tournament where, you're shooting for upside, you're looking for the best, the highest possible score each time, then I do think that stacking, and that's like, a quarterback with two of his wide receivers, a quarterback, a running back, and his wide receiver, if the running back's a pass catcher, a quarterback, a wide receiver, and a tight end. Like, I think that that's kind of, you're hoping that these guys are going to connect more and more with each other as the season goes on. And that's going to help build your point total up to the point where, you can compete in a large field tournament. So I'm okay with it there. But if you're just doing like a regular old home league, I don't think it's necessary.
No, I agree with you. Because you cannot if you're playing fantasy football, you have to look at every single player from different aspects, and you cannot just stack from the same place. Which I agree. I mean, if I love my team, I'm not gonna go with only my team. I need to watch everything.
Because then you would be playing with your heart, and you'd be stacking, and the next thing you know, you've got Patrick Mahomes and Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce and Marquise Hollywood Brown on your roster.
And if someone is injured, I'm done. My whole team is done. I agree with that. So let's talk a little bit about media hosting and content creation, Howard. As we know that you are really big in content creating, especially for SiriusXM. So how do you prep for a live show when everything is changing by the minute?
Oh, that's, the good thing is, and I definitely say there's an advantage when you have producers, right? Like when you have somebody who's helping you kind of behind the scenes, that if like there is some sort of breaking news that happens, right? Like, I mean, if something like crazy happened right now in the NFL, I'm sure somebody would send you a little private message right now and says, "Hey, Carla, guess what? Terry McLaurin just, quit the team, like, because of his contract issue," right? Like somebody would tell you that, and you got to love your producers for that. I mean, I spend the entire day. I'll get up in the morning and I'll start working on, the show sheet for the day. I'll look at all the news. I'll plan different segments that we're going to be doing. But as the day goes on, if news breaks, I have to, kind of change things around, pivot, do some different things there. So you always have to just be flexible. And because when something big does happen, like, and things change, like right in the middle of it, like it's just, it makes for good content. It makes for good conversation, right? Nothing better than getting somebody's hot take on a trade that just happened, when they were like bashing the team 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That's crazy. So what's the weirdest call-in question you've ever gotten?
The weirdest call-in question.
Yeah. I'm sure you always get weird call-ins. So what's the weirdest one of them?
Well, the beautiful thing, again, the producers kind of screen that, right? They call into the studio and the producer talks to you, and everything like that. I would say the weirdest one was God. I'm trying to think of like a good story. I don't necessarily know if I've got a recent one. I think, you know what? So here you go. I used to play around. I used to do a Sunday night show on SiriusXM. And it was when I first started with the channel. And so, during football season, it was like 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., right? Like a kind of thing. But like people who were tailgating all day or drinking all night during the games and stuff like that, they would be listening in and then they would call. And so I was just like, I was listening and, you get like some of the drunken babbling that happens. And I turned to my co-host and I'm like, we need like some sort of a breathalyzer thing, to like see if somebody's going to be, drinking or not. And like we had a guy who called in and he said, he was like, oh, he's like, I heard you talk about a fantasy breathalyzer. Did I pass? Can I ask my question? And that was beautiful, right? So
I love it. I'm sure it made your night. I'm sure it made your night.
Of course it did. Of course it did.
Amazing. amazing.
Anytime somebody, I'll say this because there is some obvious ego gratification
Yes.
that comes with it. When somebody repeats back to you,
Yeah.
so like catchphrases, things that you've said, right? Or if they like, they're like, oh, I heard you say this the other day, and blah, blah, blah. Like when they bring that back to you, like that's a very ego gratifying thing. And I've said
Yes.
some really outlandish things on the air as well. So, to have them kind of come back and, repeat certain things back to me, it's always entertaining. It really
It's a
is.
pride moment. Let's say that. It's a
It is
pride
definitely a
moment. I
pride
love
moment.
that.
I'm not above it. No, you can't be in this industry. You can't be in the public eye and turn around and be like, no, 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 I don't want to hear. Like,
No, I agree. I
yeah,
agree. You need to always smile about it, and you need to always like engage them and like down to earth kind of thing, which you're all about, and I love that about you a lot.
thank you.
Um, so what's your secret sauce for engaging fantasy fans?
What's my secret sauce? Well,
Yeah,
I mean, it's like the golden rule of life, right? Do unto others as you'd have them do unto. If you're just polite
amen.
and you're
Yeah,
nice, then okay, then I'll answer any question that you want. I have to be in a really, really salty mood to play with the trolls. Like I'll just
yeah,
kind of, I'll ignore them. I used to engage with them like really early on in the career because, I was like trying to establish myself and, I would get like butt hurt if somebody would be like, oh, I hate the sound of your voice on the radio, like kind of
really.
like that.
You have a beautiful voice. I mean,
Thank you
come
so
on.
much. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
not just because like you're here tonight, but you do.
I appreciate that. But like,
Yeah.
so what I'm saying, I guess it was, I don't remember the point. What was the question again? One more time.
I'm not gonna tell you. No, we were talking about
Oh, playing the trolls.
your secret sauce for engaging fantasy
Secret sauce for
fans.
engaging the people, right? That's what it
Yes.
is. Like the secret sauce is if I've had kind of a long, tough day and I'm feeling a
Yeah.
little ornery, a little salty, then I'll play with the trolls there. Like I'll have some fun with it. More
I love
often
it.
than not, I will try to ignore it, but sometimes salty Howard, you're spreading that butter on the bread pretty thick right now. So let's dance.
I love it. Sometimes I used to take a lot of stuff like to the heart, and because I wear my heart a lot on my hand, and I'm learning not to take it up personally because some people are just like that. They just love to hide behind the screen, and it happens, right? You just need to let it go at some point.
Yeah. You're always gonna
Um,
have unhappy people.
oh, trust me, I know. Do you ever get fantasy fatigue?
Yes. 100%. I mean, yeah, you
Yeah,
kind of have to, right? I mean, you go
yeah,
through it. It's, covering both baseball and football. So there is no off season, right? When the Super Bowl
yeah.
ends, we're
I agree.
already like, we're already pumping out the fantasy baseball draft guide, right?
Yeah,
And then all of a sudden you're like halfway through the baseball season and you got to start doing the fantasy football draft guide. So there's no rest whatsoever. I try to take little mini vacations here and there to just kind of recharge my batteries, get back
yeah.
into it. It usually involves like, a concert or two to kind of, keep my mental state proper here. But, yeah, it's kind of, you always get fatigued. I mean, to sit here and talk about it 365 days a year, 24/7. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I agree. It's a lot to juggle sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, Especially that you're a well-known face, so it's all overwhelming at sometimes. I can see that. Um, Howard, what's one topic you wish more fantasy shows could cover?
I think that we've kind of gotten to a point right now where we take for granted that our
Yeah,
audience knows what we're talking about. And I
yeah,
think that it would probably, I think it would help out. I think like the younger people jumping in and playing some fantasy football, things like that. So not so much like like, like a how-to sort of a thing, but more like a fantasy university where you're like, and it's not, this isn't something that, you deal with, once and that's it. You break it up into certain things, where you're like explaining to people, exactly what kind of players you are looking for on the waiver wire. It's not just about, who did what last week. And I think that, new players, if they want to become better, they need to kind of learn the ins and outs. And I don't think there are many people out there who are teaching just the basics, or at least just having that kind of basic, fantasy class. I think people would appreciate that a little bit more.
So, do you agree with newcomers that they come and say, I know it all? Or do you want the newcomers to say, I don't know anything, but I'm willing to learn, kind of thing? What do you think about that?
I mean, it depends if they do know anything, if they don't know anything. I mean, listen, I think any time you're trying to break into an industry, there needs to be some level of humility, but there also, you need to have that hook. You need to stand out. You need to,
Yeah.
and if that, confidence bordering on arrogance, right? You don't want to be an arrogant pain in the ass and a know-it-all, but you want people to understand that you do know what you're talking about, and you want to make sure that they know. Like, I can sit here and I can joke around and whatnot, but if I'm sitting there talking, X's and O's of football, pay attention, because I do know what I'm talking about. So, for people
Agree?
who are breaking in, you need that confidence, but not arrogance.
100%, especially for someone that's been in the industry 20 plus years. So at least listen and like accept what you need to give them, which is really amazing. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people with arrogance more than I know it all, period. So behind the scene, a little bit about Howard behind the scene. I know that you just said that you wake up at 4 o'clock, but what's a day in the life of Howard Bender really like?
It's really not that interesting.
Well, come on
Right? I
now.
should pull my wife in from the other room and be like, "What's it like for the day in the life of Howard?" I mean, I legitimately, I wake up in the morning, like I get up at the crack of dawn, and I will immediately just come right to the desk and turn the computer on, and then I'll start with the work and the show plan, and kind of doing it that way. Take my dogs for a walk, always
Nice.
a fun thing to do. But like, that's kind of, I mean, the problem with everything that I do, and doing the Monday through Friday show in the middle of the day, and having to prep for that, and then doing a bunch of work stuff afterwards as well. When I'm just at home, like, my wife and I'll like finish up everything, and we'll cook dinner. We'll sit like a couple
Nice.
of old married, farts, watching Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune while we eat. We'll settle into a little Netflix, something like that. And we'll do it that way. But like, when we do is, when we take off our time, we we'll go to like, Fish is playing in Colorado for 4 nights, and we will like take that trip there. Like, that's our excitement kind of
Nice.
stuff right now. I kind of lead a, I'm not gonna say it's not a boring existence, but it's also, I don't, I work too much. There you go. I work too much.
I hear you. I hear the work. I see the work, Howard. I see it.
I need more fun. I need more fun.
Let's go.
Listen, you know what? But I promised myself that I would, and I was actually kind of having this because I've gotten so caught up with work, and I've been a
Yes.
grinder for so long. Like, I mean, every single day, 20 years grinding in this industry, writing every chance I could get, doing any kind of show that I could possibly do. And when you do that for so long, like, all of a sudden it's tough to just break away and
I
be like,
agree.
oh, I'm going to like lighten my load or something like that, because you're always kind of thinking about the fact that there are so many up and coming analysts out there. Are they better than me? Are they funnier than me? Are they going to get my radio show? Are they going to take my time slot away? So you always have to like kind of, push yourself to keep going over and over again. But I did. And so because of that, I'm like, I'm a homebody, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm sitting at home all the time, and relaxation for me is like legit, just like sitting on the couch, watching something on Netflix and like falling asleep halfway through it because I know that what's going to happen the next day. But I promised that when my wife and I were moving to Alaska next week, actually. And so I
Happy move.
promised that because Alaska is 1 hour behind Pacific time, that I'll be doing my show from 2 to 4, that I will, I'll try and be a little bit more social
Yes.
for my afternoons and stuff like that. Because by the time, it gets to me at like 5, 6 o'clock, the East Coast is going to be, ready for nap time there. So I promised I would be a little bit more social once we get up to Alaska.
Oh, that would be nice. But like you're saying, and everything is going like super fast. So you need to stay on your feet so you can keep up with whatever is happening right now, which is crazy. Like it's insane. So someone is asking, when will you retire? Is there something behind that door soon for Howard?
No, I mean, because in all honesty, I love being on the
You love
radio.
it.
I love it so much. I love spending, it's like 2 hours a day of just, having a great time. And I'm like sitting there and I'm talking sports, and I do have a lot of fun with that. Like if I, at some point, retirement, I don't think so. Like I think that I will probably work until the day I die, just because I'm just so used to it.
Long time from now. Long time, Howard, from now. I think because you love what you do, you don't want to just stop. And I totally agree. And you're so good in what you do anyway. And you talking about it, you can see it on your face that you're so excited and happy to talk about that. So I love that in you. And not everybody have that fire still in them.
Thank you.
Yeah. So do you have a pre-show ritual?
Do I have a pre-show ritual? It
Yeah.
depends on how early I get up in the morning. Like if I get up at like 4 and I'm just hardcore grinding, then my pre-show ritual is to eat whatever leftovers are in the fridge within like in 5 minutes or less. I chug down a 5 hour energy shot, and then I get on the air and I babble for a little while.
Really? That's crazy. So what's your biggest content creation challenge?
Really being innovative, being, in the sense of trying to write something that you don't write every single year, right? There are
Yeah.
certain articles that, you write every single year on auction strategy or superflex draft strategy or something like that. Like really coming up with like new things. That's, I excuse me, I always challenge myself to have some sort of creativity. And I love the comments in the chat there about Salty Howard, because everybody does
Yeah.
love Salty Howard. And when Salty Howard writes an article, it can be quite funny. So I kind of I do it that way, right? Where I'll sit there. I write a column on RT Sports called The Weekly Bender. And with like
Yeah.
all the Scott Fishbowl drafts that are going on, everybody complaining about slow drafts and complaining
Right?
about people taking too much time, and like it's like this powder keg of energy for the fantasy football community. And so I wrote an article about all these fantasy football drafts in July. It's like Christmas in July, but I don't
Yeah.
celebrate Christmas. And I talked about Seinfeld and Festivus, and then the airing of the grievances. And then I basically sat there and complained about everybody in like a 2,000 word article.
That's amazing because people can be salty too. Like I don't get it. Scott Fishbowl is bringing so much happiness to a lot of people.
Yes.
Like why? Why stop there? Anyway, what's one thing people assume about your job that's totally wrong?
That it's easy.
What is it?
I mean, people sit there and be like, oh, well, you're just talking about football. You watch football every Sunday. You're just talking about football throughout the week. it's so much more than that. Like, I mean, there's so many hours of just research and just, blinding staring at computer screens, you know, looking for insights and, combing through data. I mean, it's not fun combing through data. Creating a spreadsheet is not really that much fun for me. So I think that everybody kind of just assumes that, you're on the radio and it's just this glamorous kind of a thing. But I legit spend far too many hours of my day, like, just dissecting information that it tends to, it becomes cumbersome.
Yeah. A lot of people tell me, "Oh, it's just a show. It's just a podcast." Yes. Do you know that I prepare 100 plus questions in case of anything else? So I know preparation, and preparation makes your show like look better, look smarter, and like you can have this conversation with your guest without even try to think what's next, which
Right.
is really amazing. And like you said it from the beginning, prepare, research, and that's what's important. So,
Exactly what you've done here, because you can
yeah,
tell by the questions and the information, that introduction you gave me. I was like, oh, look who's doing her homework there. Ah.
I love that. I love introducing my guests, and I love when they say that this is the first time someone introduced them this way. So that's such an honor to me. I appreciate it. Such an honor.
You gotta love it. You gotta love watching people put in the work and be successful with it. And, you can see how everybody's like chiming in on the chat, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's a very, that's a very telling thing about you as a host, right? Like,
Oh,
that's you. You have an audience that's engaging you. They
and
come
you
here to
did.
see you, to watch you, and to listen to you. So I think that's
Oh,
a very important thing, and that shows in the work that you put in.
I really appreciate it, but I'm sure they are here to see you as well, Howard, because they love you and they love to hear what you're putting on the table as well. So that's a big honor for me. I really appreciate your words.
Thank you.
So what's your go-to hype song before a big show? Do you have something like that?
Ooh, well, I mean, it's very much like mood oriented, right? Like,
Yeah.
there are times where I will, I'll put on like some like old classic rock, like Peter Frampton's "Do You Feel Like We Do," right? Like, and that's like a
Yes.
big long jam, and I kind of get lost in that. So there are times where I'm into that. Um, where I'm at right now, there's a song that Fish does. It's one of their newer songs. It's called "Life Saving Gun."
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, that's like at the top of my get psyched music pump up playlist there. So I'll go with that one. I'll go with "Life Saving Gun" here.
I love it. Who's your sports hero growing up, Howard?
Oh, growing up was Thurman Munson, catcher for the New York Yankees. I was
Nice.
wow. So I was, I grew up in New York, and it was the late 70s, mid to late 70s, where, like, I started, really watching some baseball, and I was a huge Yankees fan, and Thurman Munson was the catcher for the Yankees, just the
Yeah.
heart and soul of the team. And I loved him. I loved him so much. Like, my grandfather brought me to Yankee Stadium, and we waited by the players' entrance when I was, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old, and got a picture of, Thurman Munson, like, picked me up, and we got a picture of it. Like, I mean, that, like, kind of stuff there. And then he passed away. He died in a plane crash
Oh,
in 1979 during the summer. I was away at sleepaway camp, and I heard two of the camp counselors talking about it, and I,
that's
like, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And I ended up getting so hysterical that they had to call my parents and get my parents to come pick me up from
oh, I'm
sleepaway
so
camp, because
sorry.
I packed two shirts for that summer for sleepaway camp. Number one was my Thurman Munson t-shirt. The other one was my other Thurman Munson t-shirt.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And to hear that when you're away, it's a heartbreaking like information. That's crazy. Um, who's the most overrated player in fantasy right now, in Howard's opinion?
The most overrated player in fantasy football or baseball, right? It doesn't really matter.
It's up to you. Whoever you want to share, doesn't matter.
I would say, because it's more like it's more of a value thing. Not that I don't think that the player is worth grabbing. Like I think I have a very different take on both Brock Bowers and Lad McConkey that a lot of people have. I think the skill set for both players is absolutely fantastic, but the price that you're taking them in drafts right now kind of
Yeah,
kills the value, right? And they have to perform at their ceiling to just return even money. So if somebody gets hurt or if they do have a down year, we've seen guys have a great rookie campaign and then come back the second year and they're terrible with the sophomore slump.
yeah.
So, I would say it's not that I think that they're overrated. I think they're just overvalued in drafts right now.
Wow. So I'm gonna ask you some teasers questions and some curveball questions.
Okay.
Ready? So if fantasy sports were outlawed tomorrow, what would you do?
Oh, if fantasy sports was outlawed tomorrow, you know what? At this point in time right now, I think I would go to like Safeway or Walmart or something and just get a job as a stock boy,
Oh my
right?
god!
I would just because then I could just put my headphones on, I could stock the shelves, I wouldn't have to talk to anybody, right? I wouldn't have to debate the validity of what I just said about Lad McConkey because people are so upset that you just said something like that. Like, I think that's kind of where the next phase of my life is just being a stock boy somewhere in the
Wow.
back.
What's one fantasy myth you're here to bust?
Fantasy myth that I'm here to bust. That anyone can win,
Oh,
because that isn't the case. It's not the case. Like I say, any like mouth breathing knuckle dragger can win a fantasy football league by getting lucky. But you know what? If you're not sitting there putting in the work and every single week you're setting your lineup, I mean, that's diligence right there. To have
yeah,
to set your lineup every single week at a specific time, right? And stay on top of the news,
I agree.
it's not just, nobody's just going to hand you the trophy.
I agree. If you could draft a team of fictional characters, who's your number one pick?
Ooh. If I could draft a team of fictional characters.
Hmm.
I mean, there's so many different ways I can go here right now. I mean, the little nerd in me is starting to think about like I used to collect comic books when I was
Really?
younger, and it's so funny because we're moving, and so I just sold my collection, and there's like a
Oh,
little piece of me that kind of just died when I did that. So I think that I would start looking through like the different, some of the Avengers or Daredevil maybe, and some of the Marvel characters. I'd start there with the superheroes, and then I would probably finish up with like some like
love it.
old 70s cartoon characters, like,
Oh,
like
I love
Muttley.
it. Love that. What's your fantasy sports villain origin story?
Oh, my fantasy sports villain origin story.
Ah,
I walked into a league one year, and yeah, and this is I mean, this was really early on in my career, and I had just started out, and somebody brought me into a league, and everybody was like, "Oh, there's some fantasy sports guy over here. That's
oh my god,
tough guy kind of thing." And so they started with that, and I just destroyed them that season. Destroyed them that season. And
good
then
for
I
you.
literally sat there and I told every single person every single week just how bad they were. I would like write an email, right, to the whole league, but specifically targeting the one person that I just beat and told them just how bad they were and just like decimated them over there. And from that point on in the league, draft day they would bash me. Every year they would bash me. And when I would win, it would drive them just maddening,
Wow.
maddening.
So I would say this is I told you so moment, right?
Oh yeah. Oh
Good
yeah.
for it. So what's your fantasy sports walk up song?
It's called Carini by Fish.
Yeah.
It starts off, I mean, because it like so I all right, so here's the origin story for that. I had a dream in the late 90s that I was playing for the New York Yankees, but it was my head superimposed on the body of like a vintage Jason Giambi, like height of the steroids era kind of thing. And so then like yeah, you hear them call my name to come to the plate, and I take a step out of the dugout, and all of a sudden Carini starts up. It's like and like it just and then like the drums kick in, the bass kicks in, and I was like walking to the plate like a Neanderthal, dragging the bat behind me. And so that like I mean that became my song. And I use it for like bumper music on the show now, and it's a big part of it. So Carini is my song.
Every time I'm gonna hear it, I'm gonna remember you, Howard, from now on. That's amazing. Do you have a fantasy sports alter ego?
No, I think I closed that burner account down.
Did you have it before?
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
Oh, oh, Howard, come on. It's my show. You have to tell me something.
Oh, I must we must be breaking up or something. Like I can't. What's is there something wrong here? Huh? Huh? Huh?
So listen, I want to be like a little respectful because you have another show. So I'm gonna try to finish up, but I'm gonna still ask you one question that I ask everybody before we leave. So my question, it might be connected to the question before. Did you ever share something like I want you to tell me something that you never shared, a secret, or something that you never ever shared before in your life, and you want to share it on the show tonight?
Huh?
Alter ego.
I mean that's I don't really know if I have any like secrets that I just haven't shared with anybody. Yeah, you're probably you're gonna hate it here, but I don't necessarily. I don't think I really have an answer. Is there a secret? Is there a secret?
Or something you did when you were like teenager or like a long time ago, but you never spoke of at all.
Oh, I mean, yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, I used to steal candy bars from the Ben Franklin growing up all the time.
Are you kidding
It's
me?
not something that I would talk about or anything. I didn't like brag to my friends. I would like sneak in there, grab a baby Ruth or something like that, and I'd take it out. 5 finger discount. Yeah, I was a kid. I
Finger.
was silly. I was crazy. What are you gonna do?
I've heard that story before from a lot of people, so you're good.
We're all thieves deep down. We're all thieves.
I agree. We've all been there, Howard. So before I finish our our podcast, Dr. Kevin Murray, he did reach out and he is doing something. I think his book is out,
Mhm.
and it's like 60 characters and 446 pages, dedicated to celebrate the game that we all love. And this book is to help to make fantasy league more fun and more meaningful and more community driven. And I do believe I'm gonna share it after we're done with the show. It's gonna be like 99 cents as a Kindle ebook. So if you can, please like go and try and buy Dr. Kevin Murray's book. That would be really nice. Um, but before we wrap up, Howard, I know that you have at 9:30 your fourth podcast tonight, so I'm honored to have you on the show tonight. Thank you for making it happen. So let our listeners know how they can connect with you online and stay updated with your work.
Okay. On social media, Instagram, Twitter, it's at Roto Buzz Guy. I've got a Roto Buzz Guy page on Facebook as well. On TikTok, I'm at the real Rotobuzz guy because for some reason somebody already stole Rotobuzz guy from me. I don't know
You're
why, but
kidding me.
I'm the real at the real Rotobuzz guy over there. You can find me all over the pages at fantasyalarm.com. And of course, you can hear me Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on the Fantasy Alarm Show on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio, channel 87.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Howard, for engaging with us tonight and with our listeners. So mark your calendar. And for next week, I have Scott Engel. But before I say that,
Ooh.
thank you for joining me for this episode of the Game Changers. I hope today's conversation have gave you a fresh perspective, not just on fantasy football, but on the game of life with Howard Bender tonight. So mark your calendar for Scott Engel next week, Wednesday. And you don't want to miss this one. Big thank you for JC for his behind the scene magic and the powerhouse team of TSA for making this platform possible. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow us on social media. Stay connected and be part of the Sports Affiliation, a community where every fan, thinker, and change maker belongs. Until next time, keep challenging the game and making your mark. This is Carla with Howard Bender tonight, signing off. I wish you all pleasant evening. Thank you, Howard.
Thank you.